Hello and welcome. I wanted to chat with you today around temperature charts and why, if you're trying to conceive, I love to use temperature charts with nearly every single one of my patients. So, if you've been trying to conceive for a while, you've probably heard of other people talking about doing their basal body temperature charts. And a lot of the time, people are doing it merely to try and figure out when they're ovulating, which is one useful tool that we can use them for. But there's just so much more information that I can get when someone does their temperature charts that it's almost like one of the key pieces of working with me is that I need you to do your temperature charts. If someone's in the middle of an IVF cycle or taking a lot of fertility drugs, I generally won't do it because the drugs are going to be controlling what's happening. But if someone is maybe taking just something like Clomid or using just on a natural cycle, then the temperature charts are really, really important to me. There's just so much information that I can see. I've been tracking them since 2005 with patients. So though I haven't counted how many charts I've looked at, I dare say it's thousands. 15 years of looking at temperature charts is quite a lot. And there's just so much really good information that I can get from them on their own, or correlating what I see with the temperature charts and matching that up maybe against some blood work too. The interesting difference is that with blood work, we're really looking at a snapshot on that particular day. So if you have your blood work done, say on day 2 or 3, we're just literally seeing what's happening on that particular day. Likewise, day 21 or whatever your 7 days post ovulation is, we're really looking at a snapshot on just that one day. So when I get the opportunity to look at the way your temperature charts fluctuate throughout the whole month, it enables me to really see what's happening with your overall hormone picture rather than just that one particular day. So I wanted to give you some insights into some of the things that I'm actually looking for because I understand that you might not know how I use them and you may have just used them for ovulation before as well. So what I want to do first is basically teach you how to do it in case you haven't done it before. You need just a simple basal body thermometer temperature thermometer from the pharmacy. It doesn't need to be expensive. I'm not looking for like one of the guns that you point and shoot for your temperature or one that goes in your ears. Literally just one that you're going to pop onto your tongue. And you'll wake up very first thing in the morning, pop it under your tongue, and you're going to do that every single day throughout your whole cycle until we end up with a graph or a pattern of what's actually been happening with your temperatures. So let me show you what that can actually look like. So hopefully you can see this this picture okay on your screen. But what you'll see in through here is the temperatures. So these are in degrees Celsius. And I'm looking at the differences, the graph as it sits from the first day of your cycle. So it's got nothing to do with the calendar month. It's to do with your menstrual cycle. So day 1 is the first day of your cycle. So you might say take your temperature every single day, and then what we'd end up looking at is maybe a chart that would look, if I'm going to do it, something like through here, maybe dropping and then coming up. Whoops, that's a bit squishy. And then through until when the period starts and maybe a drop out. That's a really loose description of what it might look like. But what I can see by looking at that is a really clear difference between and I've really dropped that down way too low at ovulation compared to what it probably is, but it gives you an idea. It's going to give you a pattern of what it actually looks like. So what you'll end up with is a really distinct difference between the follicular phase, which is this part here, where your cycle is developed, the follicle is developing. We'll get probably most likely a drop in temperature around the time that you ovulate, followed by a really distinct rise in your temperatures and a drop off before your period starts. So through here, I'm getting really good information about your progesterone and what your body's doing to support that. So there's just so much information that I can see. Like I said, to begin with, you may be just looking at ovulation. So that was, sorry, I've lost my chart. Let me draw that back in for you. So if we draw it a bit neater down here, and then it would rise up again. I went way too low there and dropping down again. So what I can see is through the first half, I'm really getting information about what's happening with the follicle as it's developing. So there's probably more few dips and rises through here. It gives me an idea about what's actually happening with your estrogen levels. And that can give me a clue on whether or not I think we need to go ahead and do more investigation of your estrogen levels. I'll show you this in a separate bit in a minute, sorry. So then again, around ovulation, I'm looking for that dip because it gives me an idea, especially when you're trying naturally, what your body temperature looks like around the time when you're trying to conceive. The sperm are going to look for a lower temperature to survive in and to thrive in to help them try and find the egg. And I'm looking for that dip. It also tells me whether your body's at an optimal temperature for conception, but also that your body has done what it needs to do to help with the release of a follicle. Once an egg's actually released, so when the little egg comes out of the follicle it's developing, you end up with like a shell left over on your ovary, which is called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is the part that's responsible for the production of progesterone. Progesterone is what causes our body temperature to rise rapidly after we've ovulated, and it should stay nice and high. That's not actually the temperature range. I'm just showing you the difference. It should stay nice and high, and then if you're not pregnant, that progesterone level is really going to drop off and your temperatures drop off. When a woman is pregnant, those temperatures are normally going to stay consistently elevated. So it does give me a good idea what's happening with progesterone levels. I'm going to give you some variations and what the charts can actually show me. If someone has, say, more likely we're questioning polycystic ovarian syndrome, or they know they have polycystic ovarian syndrome, ovulation may come in a little later, but otherwise what I'm also going to see is quite choppy temperatures. They're normally quite up and down a lot. And that can give me a good idea, even if someone hasn't been diagnosed or had any investigations for polycystic ovarian syndrome, that can give me a good indication that it might be time to look into that. Also, we're probably going to look at that being quite extended just because of their ovulation might be a little bit later. But the choppiness, the up and down and the differences in the temperatures could give me a good idea to actually investigate and look for things such as issues with insulin resistance or levels of testosterone and androgens, what their luteinizing hormone is actually doing in regards to polycystic ovarian syndrome. Another really interesting thing that I can see, let's go to the luteal phase, is that, so say if we ovulated here and then come up, is that it can give me an idea about what's happening with someone's progesterone levels. Let's say through the second half of your cycle, you have some spotting or you have some signs and symptoms of an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone, or perhaps the bleeding, like the actual blood loss that you have with your period, and we're questioning whether that's a really sufficient healthy lining for an embryo to implant. I'll look to see what's happening with your progesterone levels. And through the second half of the cycle, if those temperatures are not staying fairly consistent, but instead are dropping quite a bit, then it does give me an idea that your body might be struggling to produce progesterone, which can happen for a number of reasons, but one of the most common reasons is stress, because your body can steal the progesterone and turn it into some of your, or use it to manufacture stress hormones. So it really does help me to give me a good insight into what might be happening with your body. I just want to use one more example here to actually show you the difference between your follicular and luteal phases, because I think once you see that, even if you're doing these at home for yourself, and you're not working with me or anyone else, if you want to try and figure these out for yourself, I think it's important to know how to do that. So let's just say that's someone's temperature charts and what it actually looks like. If I draw some lines on here, you'll see consistently that there is a difference between the follicular temperatures and the luteal temperatures. So overall, your follicular temperatures when the egg is actually developing, those temperatures are going to be lower versus the luteal phase when those temperatures are going to be obviously higher. So if you're trying to play with these yourself, go ahead, take your temperature every day, record it down and see if you can perhaps identify that difference. But if you're really confused about it and you really don't know, work with me or someone else who uses temperature charts a lot, so that we can figure out what it's actually telling us about not just when you're ovulating, but what's actually happening with your hormones throughout the follicular phase, with the nourishment of the egg as it's actually growing, what's happening with your body at ovulation, and then also what's happening during your luteal phase with the levels of progesterone. I also use these charts to help match up the timing of and the frequency of sex along with when someone's actually ovulated. Sometimes, again, I'm going to give you another sample chart here. Sometimes people or someone might have a cycle that is, say, let's say it's still sitting around 28 days. Their temperatures might follow through here, but we don't see them ovulate till sort of, that's a bit of a loose description of what that looks like actually, but we don't see them ovulating for some reason until sort of day 17. Then their temperatures rise up, maybe, but day 28, they start to drop back down again. So what I'd notice when I look through this chart or something like this is that someone might not be ovulating when they actually think they are. They're still having, that should have dropped off there, they're still having like a 28-day cycle. So they're starting their periods there. But what we notice is that the follicular phase is a little bit longer and they're not ovulating until day maybe 16 or 17. So the information that I have is that the luteal phase is a bit short, which might not be ideal for implantation. But really importantly, if they were timing their intercourse thinking that they were going to ovulate around here, they may miss it. So I may see someone put their days of intercourse, you know, like they might have started here, missed a day, and thought that this was still going to be enough to kind of cover it for a day 14 ovulation. But if they didn't ovulate till day 17, it's possible that the timing and the frequency of intercourse has actually missed it. So it's really useful for me to kind of match that up and see if we're getting it right with when you think you're ovulating and when you think you're timing sex, to see if we actually are, if you are really covering it and giving it a good chance for conception to actually happen. I hope that that hasn't been too confusing as I've really, you know, loosely washed over temperature charts. There's so much other information I can get though. The temperature range can give me some good information about your thyroid function, which is really useful. Give me ideas about your immune system, what might be happening with stress, lifestyle factors such as alcohol and how that might be influencing your temperatures and your chance of conception. The information that I really use to get from these is endless. So if you are trying to conceive and you haven't already done your temperature charts, I highly encourage you to, if you get lost and you can't interpret them, reach out to me, reach out to somebody else and actually get them interpreted and see how we can use that information to determine when you are fertile and what other information we can get about what might be happening with your hormones and therefore chance of conception. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments now. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to come back. Like I said, I hope I haven't washed over that way too quickly for you. If we're already working together, you'll know that I will assess your charts month by month and help you actually learn to understand your own body, because everyone's charts do look so different to everybody else. But if you're figuring this out on your own and you're getting overwhelmed, please don't feel like you're the only one that can't figure them out. Even as a practitioner, it took me time to really get to learn how to get all this information from the temperature chart. So please reach out if you need some help or clarification on what your charts are showing you. But I highly encourage you to start doing them, or if you are doing them and you think, is it really worth it? Yes, it's really worth it. There's so much information that we can actually get from it. So I can't see any comments coming through now, but if you do have them, pop them in the comments and I'll come back to you. Okay, guys, happy charting.